Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're talking about a guy whose name is pretty much a synonym for peace and incredible genius. But, and this is the crazy part, his massive fortune, it was built on destruction. We're talking about Alfred Nobel.
All right, here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with that big paradox of peace. Then we'll trace his story from Stockholm all the way to Saint Petersburg. Of course, we have to talk about his most famous invention, dynamite, and the empire he built with it. Then we get to his final testament, the will that changed everything. And finally, we'll ask what we can all learn from his legacy.
So let's just jump right into the heart of it. This incredible contradiction at the center of Alfred Nobel's life. I mean, how on earth did the inventor of dynamite end up creating the world's most prestigious peace prize? It just doesn't seem to add up, right?
I mean, just look at this contrast. It's what makes his story so compelling. On the one hand, you've got his legacy. It's all about peace, literature, and incredible scientific progress for all of us. But on the other hand, the fortune that paid for all of that was built on inventing and selling powerful explosives. Wild.
So it really makes you wonder, who was the real Alfred Nobel? Was he some kind of merchant of death, as a newspaper once mistakenly called him, or was he a true champion for humanity? Well, to figure that out, we've got to go back, way back to the beginning.
Okay, so to really get who this guy was, you have to understand where he came from. His early life was just this series of incredible highs and devastating lows, and that's really what shaped the inventor he would become.
And I mean, his life was a total roller coaster, right from the get-go. He was born in Stockholm, and his family was so poor they were basically bankrupt. Then they moved to Russia, and suddenly his dad's business is booming, and Alfred gets this amazing first-class education. But then, that business fails too, and by the time he's 26, he's right back in Sweden, pretty much starting from scratch.
So he's back in Sweden, and he decides to tackle what was arguably the biggest, most dangerous chemical challenge of the era, trying to tame nitroglycerin. This is where his story gets just incredible. Think about this. Nitroglycerin was so unstable, in 1864 there was this massive explosion at his factory, and it killed 5 people. One of them was his own 21-year-old brother Emil. You'd think that would be it, right? But no. He was absolutely undeterred. He just kept working, and eventually discovered that mixing the nitroglycerin with a substance called kieselguhr made it stable. And just like that, he'd created dynamite.
And that was his genius, you see. He didn't invent the fire, so to speak. Nitroglycerin was already known to be insanely powerful. What he did was build the fireplace. He tamed this incredibly dangerous liquid and turned it into a stable, solid, and totally usable tool. This was the stuff that was going to build tunnels, canals, and basically power the entire industrial age.
Okay, so with dynamite in his pocket, Nobel didn't just have a cool new product. Oh no, he had the key to a massive global empire.
And this guy was a machine. He held over 350 patents for all sorts of things, not just explosives.
And he was also a ridiculously sharp businessman. At the time of his death, he owned 93 factories in 20 different countries. I mean, that's a straight-up empire.
He was constantly traveling to manage this whole operation, which is how he got the nickname Europe's richest vagabond. Pretty fitting, right? The guy spoke 5 languages fluently, but literally had no place to call home. But then, as he got older, this reclusive, globe-trotting industrialist did something that nobody saw coming. He made a decision that would completely rewrite his own story forever.
He wrote his will, and in it, he dedicated almost his entire mind-bogglingly huge fortune to one thing, creating a series of prizes to be given out every single year.
And these prizes were for everything he valued. We're talking physics, chemistry, medicine, the biggest breakthroughs in science, but also a prize for literature, for the most incredible writers, and of course, a prize for peace, for the person who did the most to bring nations together.
Now, you have to understand, this wasn't just him being generous. It was a deeply philosophical act. Nobel was totally against huge inherited fortunes. He thought they were a curse that just made people lazy. So he gave almost nothing to his relatives and instead designed his will to reward hard work and genius, not just luck of birth.
So, after all that, what can we actually learn from this incredibly complicated, brilliant, and contradictory guy? What's the takeaway for us today?
Well, I think the lessons from his life are just as powerful as his inventions. First, he showed us that you have to persevere, even through the worst kind of tragedy. Second, it's so important to have diverse interests.
He wasn't just a scientist. He was a poet, he loved literature, but maybe the biggest lesson of all, he proved that you and only you get to define your own legacy. He literally used his fortune to decide how the world would remember him.
And that kind of leaves us with the really big question, doesn't it? It's the one Nobel's life forces us to ask ourselves. If your work, whatever it is, could be used for both good and bad, how would you make sure you were remembered for the good? Something to think about. Thanks for joining this explainer.